Last week on Legally Kidnapped.
Good evening. Our top story this week. Former Penn State football coach Jerry Sandusky is found guilty of 45 out of 48 counts of child sexual abuse and spends his first night as a convicted sex offender in a protective custody under suicide watch. In Alaska, an arm of the legislature is recommending that the state change its child welfare grievance process after years of complaints that resolving child welfare issues is too difficult. In Minnesota, cases reviewed by the child protective industry finds that child risk and safety were adequately assessed and managed in only 37.5% of the cases studied. In Nebraska, Richard Wexler, the leader of the National Coalition of Child Welfare Reform, is praising the state after a 25% drop in CPS-related child snatchings during the year ending September 30th compared to the year before. And in Ohio, a delegation from Russia comes to study the state's child welfare and foster care programs, claiming that Ohio's reform efforts for training child welfare workers and placing hard-to-place foster kids is the new national model. In Utah this week, the child protective industry told lawmakers that they are working to help families instead of ripping them apart. Washington, D.C. is helping homeless parents who seek general assistance from the city by ratting them out to the child protective industry and taking away their kids. In Florida, the child protective industry is expecting 30,000 more calls a year after Governor Rick Scott signs a bill making everybody a mandated reporter of child abuse with the threat of a $1 million fine and 5 years in jail if you don't. And a new study suggests that dads can play an even more significant role in the development of happy, well-adjusted children than do mothers. In Oklahoma, the state has billed $9.5 million in legal fees after settling a lawsuit against the state's child welfare system brought on by a New York-based child advocacy group known as Children's Rights. In Oregon, the state settles a lawsuit and agrees to pay $300,000 to the family who brought their complaints regarding CPS agents interrogating their child at school for 2 hours without parental notification, which led to false allegations of sex abuse against the father and made it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. In Michigan, a government report claims that the state spent more than $70 million on psychiatric drugs for foster kids and children on Medicaid in 2008. And according to a new study, commonly used baby soaps and shampoos, including products from Johnson & Johnson, Aveeno, and CVS, can trigger false positive drug tests in newborns. The U.S. State Department releases their annual Trafficking in Persons report, and Japan was ranked as a second-tier nation, and that human trafficking provides a significant source of revenue for organized crime. In Spain, a mother is arrested after killing her 2 kids in a Spanish hotel out of fear that social services would take them away. In India, a foster father is trying to get a court to force a mother to take her son back 16 years after she relinquished care of him. In Sweden, a couple is set to be reunited with their kids who were snatched because they were evangelical Christians who were homeschooling. And in New Zealand, an advocacy group has released further cases highlighting how the country's anti-smacking law is being used to criminalize and persecute good parents. In Ireland, a damning report into the deaths of children in state care finds that 196 kids died between 2000 and 2010, and that 112 of them were from non-natural causes. The report also states that there is a severe lack of resources within the HSE and is calling for root and branch reform of the child welfare system in Ireland. The Minister for Children expresses her sympathy for the parents of the children who died, and now they're saying that care workers who blatantly failed vulnerable young children under the care of the Irish child protective industry could face criminal charges. In Australia, the government says they're sorry for the 30-year-old forced adoption policy where unmarried mothers were forced to give up their newborns for adoption during the 50s, 60s, and 70s. In Canada this week, a judge rules that the father is too obese to care for his children, and now he's on a hunger strike. In Nova Scotia, 3 days have been set aside for a foster mother's sentencing after she admitted abusing a child in her care. An Alberta foster care supervisor gets 6 months for possession of child porn, and in Saskatchewan, nearly 100 people walk in memory of children who have died in the province's foster care system. In England, a social worker is struck off for failing to investigate a battled toddler within 2 hours. An alarming number of British foster kids are running away these days, prompting a review into children's homes. And a 14-year-old boy admits to stabbing his foster mother to death for being grounded. In entertainment news this week, Halle Berry loses her custody battle and is ordered to pay $20,000 a month in child support. And Public Enemy star Flavor Flav escapes a bit of jail time by paying up his child support debt. In Connecticut, a doctor is arrested for failing to report child sex abuse, which he said he didn't do because he's lost faith in the state's child welfare system. In Kentucky, a former social worker faces charges of tampering with public records in a case where kids who she was supposed to be protecting died. In New York, a real mother was arrested after threatening CPS agents and law enforcement officers. And a Staten Island One man is accused of abusing 6 young girls in a relative's foster home. In Ohio this week, bond is increased to $500,000 for a former foster parent and babysitter who is facing a total of 18 sex charges. In Oklahoma, a couple is convicted of abusing their 3 adopted children. In California, police think a 12-year-old girl who ran away may be in search of her real parents. In Tennessee, the mother who sent her adopted kid alone on a plane back to Russia doesn't want to pay her court-ordered child support, claiming that it won't go to benefit the kid, but rather to line the pockets of Russian bureaucrats. In Texas, charges will not be filed against a father who beat a pedophile to death after sexually abusing his daughter. And finally, tonight, in North Carolina, a 10-year-old boy is strip-searched at school after several other students accused him of stealing $20 that he didn't actually take. For these stories and all the latest dirt on the child protective industry, visit www.legallykidnapped.com. And until next week, this is Baby LK, over and out.